Now let's look at a different type of problem. So in this triangle ABC, again, not a right triangle, the question is, can you figure out how long BC is? Well, last section we learned about law of sines, which says you need an angle and its opposite side as a pair to be able to figure out any pair that's in the triangle. So if you take a look at this one, the only angle we know is this one. The opposite side is BC, which is the side that we want. So that's not helpful. We do know two other sides, but we don't know the opposite angle. So we cannot use law of sines. And so we gotta use something else. And in this section, we're gonna learn law of cosine. So law of cosine is really easy to remember because it is just the Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. However, a squared plus b squared equals c squared is only applicable to right triangles, which this one is not. So what happens is this Pythagorean theorem will have to be modified to take into the account that this is not a right triangle. So I'm going to show you how to do that. To write the law of cosine, we are writing it in Pythagorean theorem format, but we're going to change it around a little bit to write c squared first and then a squared plus b squared. Okay, so this is the Pythagorean theorem, and we can only use it on right triangle. And since this is not a right triangle, what's going to happen is we're going to have to subtract out the part that's making it not a right triangle. So we're going to subtract out 2 AB. So notice how AB are these two here. So A times B. And then cosine of C, C being the angle that belongs to the opposite side, which is that c squared. So this is kind of the format for all law of cosine. So let's try to write it for all three possible ways. So we already did c squared. So c squared is a squared plus b squared minus 2ab. So again, ab are these two that's on that same side. Cosine of angle C, and angle C is the letter on the other side. Okay, so let's try to guess what the formula would be if we have a squared. So a squared would equal b squared plus c squared minus 2bc cosine of a. Okay, so just remember it's the Pythagorean theorem minus the part that's making it not a right triangle. Okay, let's try it for b squared. B squared is a squared plus c squared minus 2ac cosine b. Now let's go ahead and practice finding these measurements. So let's find BC for this problem. So BC is going to be this side, and let's call this side little a because it's opposite of the angle A. So we're trying to figure out side A, which means we should probably use the formula that says a squared equals, because that's the one that we're trying to find. So the one we're trying to find is the one that's kind of isolated by itself. A squared is equal to b squared plus c squared minus 2bc cosine a. All right, let's go ahead and see if we have all the information we need to solve it using law of cosine. A squared is, all right, let's see. B is 21. Okay, so B is the opposite of angle B, and then C is opposite of angle C. So B squared, that's 21 squared, plus C squared, so that's 42 squared, minus 2 times 21 times 42, cosine of angle A. Angle A is 39. All right, so this is pretty simple. This is just plug it into the calculator and we're good kind of question. However, plugging into the calculator is sometimes the problem because you cannot just rely on the calculator for everything. You gotta make sure that you understand the calculator's logic in using the order of operations. So what you need to do is either type the whole thing in your calculator, which I don't like because if you make a mistake, you may not be able to catch it. So I would try to avoid that. So what you're looking here is 3 terms like this. So make sure that you do multiply these together before you add and subtract. So a lot of people, if they were to make a mistake, they would do something like this. They would multiply this whole thing together. Sorry, not multiply this whole thing together, but they would like put this part together. It was kind of strange, and then multiply this or something like that. That doesn't make a lot of mathematics sense, but it tends to happen a lot, so please be careful. Okay, so once you figure out those 3 terms, what you want to do as the last stage is square root that number. Okay, so I'm gonna do this with you guys. Okay, so 21 squared, that is 441 plus 42 squared, 1764 minus 2 times 21 times 42 times cosine 39, and make sure that we are in degrees. 1370.885. Okay, you want to round to as many digits as possible, because if you just leave it as 1371, your answer will be very far off from what it should be. So please be careful. Okay, 441 plus 1764 minus 1370.885. 834.115. Okay, this is a squared. So this is another mistake that a lot of people make, which is they forgot that this answer is a squared, not a. So the last thing you need to do is square root it. 28.881. Okay, so that's the length of BC. And so what happens if you forget to square root it? Well, hopefully you do a sanity check of every problem. So if you didn't square root, you would end up with a equals 834, and hopefully you look at that number and you say, that's too big, because the other 2 sides are 21 and 42. This cannot be the third side. It would not even be a triangle. So then hopefully you remember that you forgot a square root. So please make sure you always kind of double check your answer to see if it makes sense. All right, so let's just have you try one. And so pause the video, do this problem, and come back and check your answer. Okay, so side AB ends up being 20.999. All right, now let's look at a different type of problem. So in this problem, it says in triangle ABC, B is 6.2, C is 7.8, measurement angle A is 45. What is angle B? All right, so first thing, let's check to see if we have a right triangle. We don't know, so we cannot assume anything. The next thing is, can we use law of sines? No, there is no pair that is an angle and opposite side pair, so no law of sines. We have no choice. We have to use law of cosine. Now, which I guess formula, or which kind of format should we use for the law of cosine formula? Well, I'm going to tell you a really fast way to choose. So let's say that you needed this side, just like the previous problem. Then you would use that side as the side that's squared and then equal to. In this problem, we want this angle. So we're not looking for a side anymore. We're looking for an angle. So then you want to choose the formula that uses the opposite side as the one that's equal to. So what we want to do is Okay, you can see that the opposite side is b, the little b. So that's going to be b squared equals a squared plus c squared minus 2ac cosine b. Okay, cosine b is what we're looking for, and that's going to be the angle that's by itself. Okay, so b squared, that's 6.2 squared, equals a squared. We don't know a, so this might be a problem. Let's continue anyways. Let's see what we need to do. Plus 7.8 squared minus 2a times 7.8 cosine b. Well, that's not very helpful. We don't know a and we don't know b. There's no, we cannot solve it. However, we can try to attempt to solve for a. Okay, a is this side. So let's try the formula for a. So a squared is equal to b squared plus c squared minus 2bc cosine a. Okay, so a is what we're looking for. B side b is 6.2 squared plus side c is 7.8 squared minus 2 times 6.2 times 7.8 cosine 45. So we got all the information we need to solve for side A, and that's actually the first thing we need to do, because we need to take that information and then plug it into that other equation where we couldn't solve to find cosine, to figure out angle B. Okay, so let's go ahead and solve this one. So 6.2 squared plus 7.8 squared, and then minus 2 times 6.2 times 7.8 cosine 45. Okay, a squared is 30.889, and then square root that. A is 5.558. Okay, now we can go back into the problem and solve for angle B. Now, solving for angle B is a different, I guess, style or different format of solving it. So I'm going to show you how to do that. All right, so let's look at this equation here. So how do we actually solve for B? Remember what I said on the previous question. There are 3 terms. So how do we solve for B? Okay, so kind of just, using your algebra sense, the first thing we need to do is, get rid of things that's farthest from B. The farthest things from B are these 2 terms that's in the front, right? These 2. So we're going to take 6.2 squared and subtract those 2. Okay, so 6.2 squared minus 5.558 squared minus 7.8 squared. All right, we have a negative 53. I'm sorry, let me block this off so it's separate from each other. Okay, 0.291 equals negative 2 times 5.558 times 7.8 times cosine B. Now what do we do? How do we solve for B? How do we get rid of things that's farthest from B? Well, you can see that with this part definitely needs to go, right? This is where a lot of people make mistake. So they see that negative 2 and, all these things that's multiplied together, and they have this tendency to want to say, I want to add, add 2, add all those number that's attached to it. That is incorrect. In order to get rid of those things, you got to divide, because they're all multiplied together, and so the opposite is to divide. So please be careful. And another thing is that a lot of people are not careful enough to keep the negative. If you don't keep the negative, you're going to end up with the wrong angle. So please, please, please be careful. All right, so we're going to take this negative 53.291 and we're going to divide it by, all right, sorry, there's just a lot of little details. when you put it in your calculator, and let's say you put divide, and then you put -2, and then times 5.558, all that stuff, like this. If you did this way, it will also be wrong because the calculator thinks you're dividing and then you're multiplying. And so that is not what you want, right? You want it to divide everything. So when you put it in your calculator, make sure you do put the parentheses around everything that you're trying to divide, or else it's going to give you the wrong number. All right, so please be careful. All right, so taking that number and dividing by parentheses, -2 times 5.55a times 7.8. Okay, we get 0.6146 equals cosine b. Now the last thing to do is get rid of that cosine, and hopefully you remember to get rid of cosine, you use inverse cosine. So inverse cosine of 0.6146 is equal to b. So put that in the calculator. All right, angle B is equal to 52.075 degrees. Don't forget a degree sign. All right, let's have you try just one. Number 1, find all the missing sides and angles. Actually, you know what? Let's have you try number 2 instead. This one is a different kind of question, so it's a different practice. So you need to find all 3 missing angles. So looking at this question is very different from the ones that we have done before, because this one, the information that's given is 3 sides. So in the previous questions, there's always 1 angle that's given, but there is no angle this time. So think through how you're going to solve for each angle. You want to probably just solve for 2 angles and then use this triangle sum to find the third. But how would you solve each angle? So give it some thought. Come back, I'll give you a hint, and then you can continue. All right, so let's say that you're trying to find angle A. If you're trying to find angle A, then you need the opposite side. So that's just going to be 10.4 squared equals the 2 sides squared minus 2 times the 2 sides, and then cosine of the angle. Okay, so now this is in the same format as that previous question that we were working on. So go ahead and solve for angle A and do the same thing for another angle, and then use triangle sum to find the third angle. So again, pause the video, come back and check your answer. All right, please check your answers. Hopefully you got them all correct. And that's it for this section.